I got nothing against Handsome Lake, okay? I just don't want to start any trouble. But I want you to understand the principle of the story. It's called the Temple of Alexander in Egypt. Alexander the Great overthrew Egypt. And this is how he did it. He even built his temple at the mouth of the river. And that's where they build their temples. Huh? He hired a priest, one of the head priests, after the priest in sacred rite, meaning ceremony, after he mentions the Creator's name, to mention Alexander the Great as his son in the language. And for that deed, whatever that priest needed, if you want concubines, you know what concubines is?
Concubines.
Prostitutes, you know what I mean? Anything that priest needs, you tell me and I'll get it. You need food, lodging, women, money, whatever you need to survive. That's a relationship. I'll provide that for you. And when Alexander the Great seen the great benefit coming to him, he hired all the priests. And that's what anything you need, you tell me. See, that's what's going on today. Same thing. Okay. And that's all they had. The whole temple sunk and went into the water because he wasn't the son of who? He wasn't the son. He didn't have... You get me? Just because you got the guy saying it in sacred rite, you get me? Now, when... What's his name used to come around for Handsome Lake, they would mention George Washington's name. You get it? See what they're doing? The same thing in Galileo. They mention what? George Washington, right? How many times? You hear that, right? George Washington, George Washington. What I'm saying, it's the same principle over there they use to us today to put that on our minds, that name. And Aduma was here the other night, and I was telling him, he remembered, I talked from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, and I told Aduma, that's called the flower of life. I spoke in poetry. He remembered that. The next day, Larry Thompson came to the fire. One of those three guys must have called Larry and told him what happened, huh? How powerful that fire was. History was coming out, huh? And all day Larry sat there, and guess what he said every other sentence? George Washington. George Washington. Who sent him there? Who do you think he called? He called Washington. What do you think Washington? Get the fuck to that fire right now. See, they knew what happened. I opened that, huh? That's the most sacred thing. Remember that little boy? That's what I'm talking about. That's the fire. That burning bush. Right? Remember last night when we were watching that? He wants me to do it again and explain the whole thing. We'll get the movie. And it's about this right here. What I'm talking about. That's so important to understand that. As they just put that on. And when I went to Guatemala to send your grandfather off, to honor him, that's why I went. And Cheyenne, I had pictures at the altar. And they mentioned this guy's name 5 times. And I said, man, I heard this before. But I didn't, disrespect it. But I knew, I said, there's some Spanish influences here. And like I was telling him, him and I watched that movie yesterday on Yucatan. Remember they talked about that serpent king who came in a stone canoe and had all these spiritual powers and the people feared him? Remember? It was right in there. And here I was at their fire, and guess what I was talking about? The stone canoe. And here we just watched the movie, that's 5 years ago. 13, that's 6 years ago. And here I'm just talking off the seat of my pants, you get me? What I know. And then the army came to that fire. The army came there, the headman, the condor, had to go up the hill. And he came back down the hill, and this is what he said. He says, I have to share this with the people here. The army's up the hill right now. They wanted to come down here. But they're so scared of this one individual that's at this fire that they don't dare come down here. That's how scared they are. And everybody's going like, who is it? Who is it? I didn't even, yeah, who is it? It didn't dawn on me because of the things I was saying at the fire about the stone canoe. I didn't know we had all kinds of spiritual power in here. I'm trying to teach them. I said there was only one messenger, and this is the fire he came to. We called him the peacemaker. I said a Mason will say he goes and he has all the women. I said, but I don't think he would get to another village. I think they would kill him because you can't go to every village and do this to all the women. Besides, you get all worn out, you know.
Yeah.
Now women are laughing, right? They would try, but I don't know. Anyways, I said, what he did is he shared his knowledge and he lifted their minds with that serpent wisdom. Then he came to this fire, then he went down to the valley of Peru, the Incas, and those women just turned their heads. I said, there was only one messenger. And you people have that same story of a messenger coming in the stone canoe and they're all turned their heads like, who the freak is this guy? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I said, there was only one before he crossed the water. And the people are going like, wow. You know what I mean? I really, like everything that, like, these are pieces your grandfather taught me. You know what I mean? And later on you get another piece and it all fits together, you know?
Who was the grandfather?
That's his grandfather.
Who?
Jake Swamp.
Oh, Jake Swamp.
When that passed.
He's my uncle.
Oh, your uncle? Oh, your uncle? Oh. Oh, that's your mother's brother.
His brother. Yeah.
Wow.
Because she's the youngest.
Yeah, oh,
He
the
was one of
baby.
the
Yeah,
oldest.
okay. Like I said, I did a thing at the cookhouse and I had the ark and I put it right in front of Jake and wow, he really liked that. I could tell. I said, Jake, you're the one that told me. And he remembers telling me, you know, I heard you talk about this before. I said, here it is. I could tell how much he liked that picture. I should have made one just for him, you know. I said, once a year we stir the ashes. The ashes is your ancestors. That's why we do the ceremonies. That's why we stir those ashes. To keep that fire what?
Lit.
Exactly. And that's why see, the only one in our family that knew poetry was Cheyenne. So when those guys asked me to speak, guess who was speaking at the fire? Was Cheyenne. That's divine, you understand me? That's called the key to the underworld. It's called the flower of life. Very sacred. You look in Egyptology, the flower of life is the sacred fire. That's why Larry came the next morning. And I said to Dan and Lee at my daughter's wake, you guys all thought it was Debbie. I said, that's why you took her away from me. I said, I went through her. I said, now what are you going to do? Because she's on her way to the spirit world. She's going to tell Creator what you did to me. Like I let him have it right back. Yeah, and I didn't use a gun. You know what I mean? I didn't go disrupt anything. I knew what they were doing. But I didn't have no allies to get out of it, you know. And we were talking about this the other night. Adumat was here. I showed him how there's something wrong with this movement, and he agreed. You know, the whole movement started right here on the back porch, me and Adumat, for the men to help build the longhouse strong again. Huh? Hey man, 2 guys. And look how big it got. And he said it himself. There's something wrong. I said, there's more than something wrong. I said, I'm not gonna point fingers. I just want you to, you know, you figure it out from what I'm telling you. Wow. He said, Donnie, I gotta come back. I said, yeah. I said, it's important because this is your birthright, and you can see what's going on around. See all the destruction that's going on around? Mm-hmm. Did you stand up straight? I know you did. You know, but I know there's other. He goes, I know, I heard them talking. They wanted to kill somebody. It was me they were trying to kill. So I was right on, you know. And that order came from Rome and Washington, you know. And I told Ryan, I said, your problem is when they told you to kill me, you didn't do it. That's going to be your downfall. You know? I don't. I said, I heard them say that. I said, I said, now you'll see why I don't come back. Would you hang around with guys like that who are trying to kill you? Or would you just say, hey man, I'm safe here? He said that staff protects your house, right? You were just saying that. I had a staff over there, the doorway, for 30 years. Sean just took it last year for the Hadouis, so 30 years it was sitting there. Minnie Garo, as far as when she came in my house, she couldn't cross over that doorway. He says that protects you. And because I had the midwinter, it was a spring, what ceremonies in the spring. Anyways, they came after me at Ann Jocks and I didn't go. I sat right here. I did a fire of my own, and I felt something in my face going like bumps. I said, something's wrong with me. I sat right there. Steve Chubb came in here. He says, what the hell's that on your face? What, you can see this? He says, you got bumps like worms in your head, like popping out like this, huh? Are you serious? He goes, yeah. I said, that's why I didn't go out. I thought I was just imagining this, so somebody did something, you know? Mm. So I said, bring that person to me. Who did this? Rather than to, you know, do anything. The next morning, Minnie's standing right there. And she couldn't look me in the eye. Every time she tried to look me in the eye, her arm went this way and this way. And because that staff was right, I just put together just a while ago when he's telling me this. See? That's over 20 years ago. But he had that piece. You know how they always say everybody's got a little piece that comes together? It's all there. That's all part of the fire.
The great law of peace.
It's all part of that fire, believe me.
Great law of peace.
And then we were watching that movie last night, and I was telling him about that fire, and it's all coming together. It's getting brighter and brighter. That's why I say something's big is coming. You know?
Yeah, you gotta keep an eye on his eyes. Watch.
No, when I talk to the white man, I feel this, something like this comes out of my neck. Woo. I know what that is. That's serpent, huh? And when I speak, it's like this. I feel like I could take my brain and put it right here because it's open, huh? And my eyes turn like crystal, like fire. And I had a guy stand up at a tribal meeting trying to stop me from talking. He stood up and fucking blood just went poof right across the room. He died 2 weeks later. I'm not making fun of him, but I'm just showing you the authority. You get me? I paid respect to him, and I let him talk, but he was trying to shut me up. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to fight what they were trying to do. Me and Bubba went to the fire and we burned tobacco. You know. Then we said, okay, this is what we got to do. We'll go to the tribal meeting because we came from the fire, and we'll go to try to stop. This is going to hurt the people, what they're trying to do. You know, they're trying to bring the Constitution. And at least we did. Our Constitution comes from that fire. Huh? And Bubba said, wow. That guy died 2 weeks later. He went up against it. Oh, and I spoke. Brad Waterman was there. And I told him, I said, you know, I said, here you are, my leaders are sitting with this man right here. I said, 2,000 years ago, a man called the Peacemaker sat at the table with these people here. I said, right after that, it was called the Last Supper. He was finished. And now my leaders are sitting with you today. You get me? Mm-hmm. It was the warriors, right? I said, maybe those men sitting with you don't know who they are. I said, but all it takes is one to change this picture. I said, then you came to this land, you set the table again. You called it Thanksgiving. And look what happened to it after we ate with you. Look what happened to our land after that. Now you're here in my community, sitting with my leaders. You get me? Mm-hmm. I said, maybe these guys don't know who they are, but I know who I am. Right after the meeting, he came looking for me. I was at the French Riviera. I don't know if you remember. It was a restaurant where the cop station is. There was a pyramid in there, inside there. And I was sitting in there, and he come in. People around here, somebody comes from Washington, they want to shake hands and suck elbows with him. You know what I mean? It's a big deal. No, I'm serious. He come in, hey, everybody's screaming like, hey. He goes, oh, I'm not looking for you. He went by everybody, and then Myron said, hey, Myron had his hat in the air. He walked right by Myron. There's a guy I'm looking for right there. It was me, huh? Who the freak are you? Like everybody thought, even Art Montour, he didn't even want to talk to Art Montour. He goes, what's your name? I said, Don Smoke. I never heard anything so powerful in my life. Where did you get that kind of history? I said, can I ask anybody? I talk like that all the time. He said, that's powerful stuff. He says, I'm going to Washington tonight, and I'm going to talk to the man. Who do you think he's going to talk to? There's only one man in Washington.
Trump.
No. Come on, this is 97.
Oh, 97.
Would be Clinton, right? Yeah. He's going to tell him what I said. See, Brad Waterman, they're trying to bring the water here and bury us under what? Water. So by me speaking, and that's what happened when I spoke. Whoosh,
And they send the water,
So
man.
you get me? Yeah, you get it. It's all symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing is walking on
Water.
See, because their clans come from the water, we rise above it. That's what this knowledge does. We're walking all over them. See, if the master plan was to colonize this community, that means everybody would be under what? Because we're not accepting it. We're walking on what? Water with that knowledge. You know?
You're not under UCC. You're not under maritime.
Yeah.
You're under the
I'll
great
tell
law.
you what
You
the
know
plan. I'll tell you what the plan is. Huh? And right now, you see them at the fire, that one at the end of the reservation. You see Roger and them guys, but you still see floods in Maryland. Why? To put the bear at the head is a violation of universal law. I'll show you on my I showed you before. The light shines down from the leg of the bull to the condolence cane. Doesn't shine down on the bear. That's why it's called the wolf belt. You get me? The wolf belt, meaning he's the wolf clan, sits at the head, not the bear. And that's what we were talking about, was all those connections on this. It all started right there on that porch, right here. All I had there was no windows, just the roof was on, and I had a little oil lamp like this. The big oil lamp, but it was a miniature. The pot belly was only that big, little flame like this. And we sit there just like this, and talk about how the longhouse and what it should be, like the men should back it up or anything they passed, and we go out and enforce it in the territory to show our longhouse ways is superior here, and next thing you know, they were pointing fingers at us and saying we were the enemy. I was, holy shit, they said that I was training men to kill chiefs, and when we pushed the state out, I said none of those kids were on the road with me. I was out there by myself. Because I didn't want anyone to be able to say, yeah, he's doing that. Wasn't doing that. What the paper was saying, they're trying to say, I train people to overthrow the government. To protect our government. You get me? Our traditional values, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then when those guys were having a meeting, I would say that too. I said, there's another aspect to what you call it's going to get there. He's a spiritual being too. He's a mentor for the people. He's that example, huh? He's like the son of creator, then he's got to act like that. Oh, no, it's just military. I said, no, it ain't. It's both political and spiritual. See? That's the medicines. That's the ceremonies, The teaching. You teach the kids, huh? You walk the earth in that righteous way. You don't walk and disrespect everybody, you know what I mean? Be humble. Yeah. That was back in 1985. They had a camp in Ganyanga. And I went and I worked there. I got paid, but I was a teacher, I helped the kids, huh? Instead of sitting home playing Nintendo, they were out there doing sweat lodges, studying stars, eating medicines, telling stories, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they loved it. In the morning, they had to run 2 miles in the morning through a course through the streams and rope bridges and really get their hearts pumping, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was different.
Yeah.
I really out with nature. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was,
We all need to
5
go back
weeks.
to nature, back to Mother Earth, Uncle.
Yeah.
That's where it is, the medicine.
And my son was there too. And when we had the roadblock, I didn't have anybody to help. It was me, Mitch Deere, and Art Montour. Even the guys here didn't even. Too scared, huh? Because everybody has guns, huh? And my son come up to me and said, Bub, I want to go under. I said, Stacy, I only got one son. Well, what the hell did you teach me this for? And I went, oh shit. In other words, it's do or die, I told Mitch, I said, I only got one son. He said, I understand what you're saying. Make it look like he said, don't worry, I'll watch him. I said, Mitch, this means a lot to me. I don't want to lose my only boy, you know what I mean? Just a little guy,
Mm-hmm.
But it meant something to him. I think he was like 9 or 10, I wouldn't allow anybody else. I said, I want those kids around here.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted him to see what we taught him was real. You know what I mean? When the FBI came, there was no kids around. It was just Junior David and Adunwa, Lonnie Thompson and his two brothers, Jeffrey and Basil, and Junior and myself. When 100 FBI agents came in, and we turned them around. 400 state troopers. And it was a V shape. They came down from the Legion. They were walking this way, and they said, "Okay." Art's on the phone. He said, "Okay, this is it, Donnie. It's do or die." And I started walking. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna confront them." "Here, take this with you." He hands me a shotgun. What the fuck am I gonna do with this? Fuck, I'll get killed. As I walk by the roadblock, I said, "Here." I said, "The great law." Remember what I'm saying. The great law. You don't use a gun. You stand up straight with what Creator gave you, and that's wampum, belt, and pipe. So I'm gonna hit him with peace. You know what I mean? So I come head to head with the FBI. He says, "We gotta sit down and talk." I said, "No, we're not here to talk. You had a chance to talk to our council. That's why we're here today. And I don't mean the tribal council. I'm talking about the Longhouse Council. The talking's over. We come here today to finish that talk. We're gonna enforce what the decision was. They already made the decision. We're just here to finish the job."